The lease rental profile. In this video, we're tackling a critical and often underestimated part of lease accounting. This is one of those areas that quietly drives a lot of risk in lease accounting, especially if you're relying on spreadsheets. It's not that the rental data isn't available, it's that it is, but rarely as simple as it looks. The lease rental profile is one of the core inputs and is key in getting the lease accounting right. The rental profile is the starting point for everything. It feeds into your lease liability, your right-of-use asset, and your charges to profit and loss. But here's something critical. Operating leases don't behave like finance leases. They don't follow a tidy, unchanging schedule. They reflect real-life negotiations, which means rent-free periods, CPI-linked uplifts, deferrals, stepped increases, and mid-term reviews. So, if you're treating them as straight line, you're building error in from the start. What's at stake? When you get the rental profile wrong, it doesn't just stay in one cell of a spreadsheet. You're looking at restated balances, prior year adjustments, audit flags, even non-compliance. And if you're managing this on behalf of clients, the reputational risk becomes shared. Real-world consequences. I've seen it happen more than once. A lease with a mid-term CPI rent review. The finance team had modeled it as flat throughout. So, when the uplift took effect, the remeasurement was missed. And the discount rate wasn't touched. Not because it should have been, but because the liability update never happened. The result? A full recalculation during audit. Time pressure, reputational stress, all because of one missed trigger. What complicates the profile? Part 1. So, what makes rental profiles messy? Indexation clauses, CPI or fixed percentage uplifts. Rent-free periods, usually at the beginning but not always. Deferred or discounted rent, especially from COVID-era deals. Step increases that don't follow a regular schedule. One-off concessions buried inside letters or emails. These things don't appear as clean monthly payments, and they can't be left out. What complicates the profile? Part 2. And there's more. Leases that have been impaired, but rent is still payable. Foreign currency leases, where FX movements hit both cash flow and measurement. Changes to the lease, like extensions, partial surrenders, or break options exercised. Scope changes, like subletting or reducing floor space. Componentized leases, where land and building must be separated for depreciation under UK accounting standards. All of this needs to be modeled and regularly reviewed. Remeasurement versus discount rate. Now let's clarify something that's often misunderstood. If you modify a lease, by changing the term or scope, or extending or reducing the asset, that triggers remeasurement. And when that happens, you must reassess the discount rate. But if the payments change due to CPI, that's different. That still triggers remeasurement of the lease liability, but you use the original discount rate. Why? Because it's not considered a lease modification. It's an expected change baked into the original terms. So, modifications equals new discount rate. CPI-driven uplifts equals same discount rate but updated liability. Common mistakes we see. One of the most common and costly issues we see. The finance team simply isn't told about changes to the lease. A lease gets extended, but no one flags it. A rent review kicks in midterm, but the updated rent doesn't reach the model. Or worse, a lease is terminated early, but it stays in the accounts as if nothing changed. When these changes aren't captured and remeasured, the lease liability and right-of-use asset drift out of sync with reality. The discount rate may need reassessing. The expense profile could be wrong, and by the time audit spots it, you're already on the back foot. This is why having a communication process, not just a system, is critical. Because lease decisions don't always flow through finance. And in addition, we often see the same red flags. No update to the discount rate following a modification. No documentation to support how the rate was determined. Missing remeasurement when CPI uplifts take effect. Applying different logic across business units, countries, or systems. These aren't minor oversights. They raise real questions during audit, and they introduce material risk. even in portfolios that look small on paper. That's why building a proper process around lease change notifications and ensuring those decisions reach finance is critical. It's not just about capturing data, it's about protecting the numbers you're reporting. Why spreadsheets fall short. And this is where spreadsheets really struggle. No version control when leases change. No audit trail for how profiles were updated. No automation for indexation, stepped rent, or remeasurement events. FX exposure manually updated, break options manually tracked, and lease modifications usually built in as workarounds, not properly processed. When everything becomes manual, mistakes are inevitable, especially under time pressure. Smarter, safer alternatives. So how do you reduce that risk? Adopt specialist lease accounting software, or outsource the lease accounting to a qualified team. Both approaches give you structure, automation, and a clear audit trail. All things spreadsheets can't provide when the lease data gets complicated. Build a solid framework. Good practice starts here. Even with good software, the fundamentals still apply. Carry out a critical review of the lease documentation, linking key clauses to your accounting model. Good practice doesn't just keep you compliant, it keeps you in control. Start by making sure you actually have all the lease agreements. That sounds basic, but in many organizations, leases are scattered across departments. So, put a system in place to collect everything centrally, and make it clear who's responsible for providing them. Next, set up a reliable process to track changes. That means working with property, procurement, operations, anyone likely to make a lease decision, and making sure finance is in the loop early. Once the documents are in, take the time to review them properly. You're not just ticking boxes, you're identifying the clauses that affect accounting, rent reviews, break options, indexation, incentives. Those all need to be reflected in your lease model. And in addition, there's documentation. Every change, whether it triggers a remeasurement or not, needs clear supporting evidence. And that includes explaining why a change did or didn't result in a new discount rate. If you reassess the liability, but not the rate, write it down. If you did both, back it up. Apply consistent logic across all leases. This isn't the time for one-off treatment, especially if you're working across multiple business sectors within your organization. And finally, keep your records audit ready. That means traceable, time-stamped, and complete before the questions start coming in. It's not glamorous, but it's what separates firefighting from proper financial control. That's how you build trust in your numbers and in your process. If you're navigating this right now or preparing for the changes under FRS 102, Section 20, you're not alone. Visit the Knowledge Hub at Lease Solutions Pro. We've built it to provide practical tools, real-world insights, and strategic advice to help you manage lease accounting with confidence. And remember, it's always easier to get it right the first time than to fix it under pressure.